Hello, today I would like to talk about something that may well ruffle a few feathers because people don't like to be stereotyped. But the fact is, stereotypes exist because certain types of people end up acting in a particular way. So let's not believe there's any wisdom in thinking we're all exactly the same, because we're not. Especially when it comes to driving. So I thought it would be fun to go through the 10 worst types of road users, starting from number 10 being either not that bad or actually quite good, going all the way to number 1, where indeed they are incredibly terrible. Drivers of classic cars. Of course, drivers of classic cars don't drive a lot, at least not in their classic car. But they do drive other cars, which I'm sure they drive not as well. That isn't the point. The point that I want to make is probably one I'm not even going to get to, and I should probably just shut up right now and move on to the next one. There's nothing you can say bad about drivers of classic cars, except that maybe they drive a bit too carefully for the majority of people on the roads, and therefore they make people annoyed. And when people are annoyed, they drive bad. So you could say that vicariously, they cause road rage. Tough one, that. HGV drivers. Oh, come on. They're highly trained. They have to go through more tests. Same as bus drivers. Anyone who drives a big vehicle, they have to go through rigorous tests, have to learn more stuff than the majority of people on the road. However, they can have a habit of driving just a little bit too close on the motorway. You've got something right up your back. You can't see the driver's face. All you can see is this slab of plastic and grill and lights and stuff like that. It's intimidating because you don't know whether that driver can even see you at that distance. The biggest fear, of course, is that you might need to stop suddenly. But of course, the driver of the HGV can see beyond your car. So the chances are they'll be able to see whatever it is that makes you have to stop suddenly before you do. That is not giving them an excuse. It isn't an excuse. There is no excuse for tailgating. And that's why they actually appear on this list at all, because quite simply, they just shouldn't really do it. Number 8, and probably a little bit higher up on the list than they deserve, mummies. Mummies. I'm sorry, I know not all mummies are bad drivers, and I'm not even saying that they're that bad, but they do have a few habits that I particularly don't like. One of them being not very good or considerate parking. One being dropping children off at school when they live only 100 metres away and sitting outside the school gates or on an adjacent street for 15 minutes with their engine running because it's cold outside, or because it's warm outside and you want to keep your aircon on, or because it's just too much of an inconvenience to simply flick the engine off whilst you wait. That's not a good habit. That mummies or daddies who do that, no, it doesn't stop there either. We all agree you shouldn't be using your mobile phone whilst driving. No, unless it's you. Then it's different, because your particular thing that you have to deal with that could be left till afterwards because it isn't actually an emergency is different. You're in better control of your car than anybody else, and therefore you get the green light. You're okay to drive too closely on your way to school, whilst on your mobile phone, whilst eating a bacon sandwich. You're the one that's okay to stop outside the school on the zigzags because you're only going to be there for a moment at the most important time not to park on them, but it's you. So that's fine. And although I've cited this as mummies, I really mean most people. Most people who just think that their journey is just a bit more important than everybody else's, even if they don't really need to do it. You are the people that make up the majority of the bad driving on the roads. The only thing is, it's not that bad. It's just inconsiderate. It's just a bit selfish. It's just a bit arrogant. Shouldn't be able to get away with it, but driving instructors. How can driving instructors be that bad at driving? They teach other people how to drive. Yes, they do. But do they? Sort of. In actual fact, they just teach people how to pass a test so they can go on and make their own bad habits that they're not responsible for. When I was learning to drive, my driving instructor told me all sorts of useful things about how to go about driving beyond your test that would be quite useful and quite considerate. Then he got snapped up by the AA, and I had to go along with him to the AA, and he didn't like it, so he left. And I ended up with a different driving instructor that basically just told me, just do this, just do that, etc., without really any reason. Like everything else, we're all set up to pass tests, but not really fully understand what it is that we're trying to do. And I don't think that's a particularly good system when it comes to driving. Once objects in the road like cars and barriers and fences and people become a way of stopping your vehicle rather than your brakes, then it's time to stop. Once you can't get out of your car without falling, once you can't get into your car, once your car is surrounded by dents, all minor dents, because of somebody else, it's time to stop. I'm sorry, I am, because I don't want to be that old. And when I am that old, I'm probably going to be exactly the same as everybody else, where I just simply refuse to believe it and say, nope, I'm just as good as anybody else. There was a time where we had something called boy racers. Sometimes they were girls, not very often. And these young people, with their exuberant confidence to outperform their abilities and crash. I know I did. Most did. It was said that you will always crash your first car. I certainly did, because we haven't got the actual driving skills to match what we believe we have. These days, they're not called boy racers. They're called twats in Audi A3s, and they're a lot worse than what they ever used to be. But basically, instead of just having an old knackered car that they could crash and then just get another one, those people are still about, by the way. No, they have something new. They have something high performance. They have something where they can intimidate other road users and call them Karens for actually being in the way, trying to do the job sensibly. They rely upon other drivers who actually look out for them, not to let them kill themselves or other people. These new breed of boy racers are utter road terrorists. People get defensive by this, but for some reason it is the Audi A3 or the Golf R or the Mercedes A45. Why is that? They have some sort of image that goes along with their mentality, which hasn't grown up. And it's a shame, because all the time when you hear about a crash somewhere in Rochdale, you know it's going to be one of those cars somehow ended up on its lid. And that does not happen whilst following the correct road procedure. You guys are dickheads. Simple as that. How is it possible to be even worse? Well, you could be on an e-bike. An e-bike. We used to have young people on scooters, the 50cc things, driving right up your arse and then being surprised when you have to stop suddenly and they run into the back of you. Those that get pissed off when you have to use your wash wipe and end up with a helmet full of screen wash. They ride around the roads without their tax, without their insurance, thinking that they're untouchable. And because that's kind of what they are, untouchable. You can't catch them, you can't stop them. They come from nowhere. And whilst you're out at night time, now you've got to start being on the lookout for black objects in the black, because they like to wear black clothing, no helmet, balaclava, no lights. Whilst every other car on the road is dazzling with its front fog lamps on, forgetting to switch their full beam off, etc., makes them almost impossible to see. Yet, if you hit one, it's going to be your fault. I'm really not keen on these at all. At all. What makes them bad, though, is this invincibility that they seem to have about themselves. They must know that they're not visible. That's part of the idea, isn't it? So they can escape whatever it is that they're up to at night time. You'd imagine they'd still have enough going on upstairs to realise that they cannot be seen. Or maybe they haven't. Actually, they probably haven't. Number 3, minicab drivers. There are going to be some nice, good driving minicab drivers out there, but let's say that the other 98% of the minicab drivers are making you look bad by having some terrible habits. I'm talking about just stopping on zigzags, stopping wherever they like, because, oh yeah, I've got a passenger to pick up. Yeah, a passenger that can walk, that can move by themselves, with the exception of sometimes we have somebody that has a wheelchair or needs some sort of help. That doesn't happen very often. But the trouble is, they're picking up the kind of people that don't often drive themselves. So they have no clue of the rules of the roads. They don't have any empathy whatsoever with the rest of the driver. Maybe they're only having to wait 10 seconds each, but that's 50 of them having to wait 10 seconds each. That's a lot of time being used up because you can't be bothered to walk. And it isn't just that either. Minicabs are supposed to be highly maintained, yet I don't see that whatsoever. I see the opposite. I see them being driven around with lights that have gone weeks on end because they don't want to open the bonnet up and actually scuff their digits trying to figure out how to change a lamp. That would never get through one of their MOT tests, would it? But somehow it does. They stop where they like, they do 3-point turns in the road when there's loads of traffic everywhere. They back out onto main roads rather than just simply turning around and coming out the proper way. I get the impression that minicab drivers often don't even have a driving licence. So I'm sorry if you are a minicab driver and you actually try to do it properly. But minicab drivers are professional drivers. They drive for a living. You would expect them to be good at it. Number 2 of the worst road users in Britain are van drivers. And I don't mean professional van drivers. I mean people who drive a van because they own a van or as part of their work. Plumbers, plasterers, any kind of builder. Surprised? I would be too, except when you observe how they do it. You see, a van is easy to drive. In some ways, it's too easy to drive. It means that a normal driving person can climb into it, and once they've just got used to having a bit of extra width there, they can drive it comfortably. You can see well out the front, not too well out of the back. And it's that bit out of the back that causes so many problems. Did you know that 80% of all traffic jams are actually caused by van drivers with their braking? When they don't anticipate traffic far enough ahead on the motorway, they brake, you can't see past them, you have no choice but to brake yourself just in case. And that's a made-up statistic, but it's probably quite correct. When I was in my 20s, I was a van driver, but an actual van driver. That was my job, to drive a van, to deliver things. And with that, I learned the best ways of actually driving a van so you weren't inconveniencing anyone or getting in the way. And one of the worst things that van drivers do, just like minicab drivers, they just park where they like. And sure enough, they may have stuff to offload or to load. But what's wrong with just moving it out of the way afterwards? The amount of times I've seen vans parked overnight right on the corner of streets where you simply can't see past them is pretty embarrassing. That is not good behaviour. And why is it every time you see an Amazon van, it is completely smashed to bits absolutely everywhere? I'll tell you, because they just get people in to drive them. They're not van drivers, they're not professional drivers, they're just people who are given the keys, go and deliver all that stuff. If you hit anything, try not to be seen doing it. But the real ones I'm thinking of are the arrogant, right up your arse kind of drivers, the oi type men, you know, the ones that like to go on holiday with other men, the ones that have pictures of themselves on Facebook profiles with a load of other men. That kind of man, that kind of macho man that likes to be surrounded by other men, all football t-shirts on, chest out, oi, oi, how's it going, Savaloy? Yeah, they're not really the kind of people that should be trusted with a van. And finally, the worst kind of road user are indeed pedestrians. They just use the road to get from one side of the road to the other. That's why they're difficult. More and more these days, people are choosing not to bother driving. We have minicabs for that kind of thing, which is exactly why they don't understand how minicabs are driven so badly, and they don't think, what's that horrible knocking noise coming from the front? They have no idea. They have no idea what a car does. They don't know what it should sound like. They also don't know what they should be doing whilst crossing the road. Well, what you should be doing whilst crossing the road is actually fucking looking to see whether you're about to get knocked over. Now, these days, it's become the emphasis that it is the driver's responsibility not to run people over. And I do agree with that. But I do think in order to use the road in the first place, whether you're driving on it or walking on it, you do need a sense of understanding of the dangers of just simply walking across the road and thinking, well, I've right of way, they have to stop for me. Because remember, on these same roads, we have old people that haven't noticed you there. We have twats in Audis that couldn't give a shit whether you are there. We have school mummies that are too busy on their mobile phones to notice that you're there. You have people on e-bikes that think that they're visible even though they're in black at night time. How are any of these other types of road users going to have any understanding of your presence? They're not. So you end up with an almost death situation because one of you has to jump out of the way suddenly. Go to somewhere like Todmorden, where there seems to be an awful lot of non-drivers. You can spot pedestrians. You can tell when somebody drives and when they don't drive by the way they simply cross the road. And as they go across this particular crossing, they look. They look out, they have self-preservation. They acknowledge the driver, they put their hand up to show some sort of camaraderie for using the road. But if you're just a pedestrian, you don't do that. You simply walk across the road like this, and you don't even hope you don't get run over, you just assume that you're not going to do. Luckily, as an experienced driver, you can spot them first because you see them heading towards the crossing and they don't look at all. They don't look at you, they don't take their eyes off their phone. As we get further and further into a non-driving country, pedestrians are rife. They're everywhere, not looking at what they're doing. And because of this age, they're so entitled. They think they shouldn't get run over for just stepping out in front of the road. Pedestrians have children who will do exactly the same thing. They won't be taught, be careful when you cross the road because you might get run over. No, it's the driver's responsibility to not run you over. And that's why pedestrians are my number one dislike on the UK roads. Thank you for watching.